I moved into the house last fall, a little cottage at the edge of town, tucked behind a curtain of pine trees and wrapped in silence. It was cheap, quiet, and came with just enough creaks in the floorboards to feel lived in but not haunted. I was grateful for that. I needed peace. It was the first place I'd ever had to myself. No roommates, no boyfriends, no shared leases with passive-aggressive chore charts. Just me. I could finally buy the soap I liked, light candles that smelled like anything but pine, and leave my bras hanging off chairs without apology. I live alone. Or, I thought I did. The first time it happened, I chalked it up to forgetting. A light left on in the hallway when I swore I'd turned it off. A spoon in the sink I didn't remember using. Small things. Annoying, but explainable. Then it got stranger. I started waking up to the closet door cracked open. Just a sliver, like someone had peeked in or out. I'd shut it and go to bed, and the next night, there it was again. This was repeated a few nights until I finally stopped bothering to close it. One morning I found muddy footprints in the entryway. Just one set, small, really small. I didn't own shoes that size. I didn't even own mud. The yard had been bone dry for weeks. I checked the locks. I checked them twice. Nothing was broken, nothing stolen. Just the footprints, leading to the basement door. I don't go down there much. It smells like earth and iron, and there's a crawl space at the back I never dared look into. Too low to stand in, too dark to see. I kept it shut tight. Until one night I heard humming. I was brushing my teeth, the sound soft at first, childlike. The same low tune, over and over again, echoing up through the vents. My blood ran cold. I froze, toothbrush in hand, and strained to listen. It stopped the moment I moved. I slept on the couch that night with all the lights on. The next morning, the basement door was open. Wide open. That was the first time I considered leaving. But I didn't. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, or a dream maybe. People hear things all the time in old houses. That's all it was. I told myself that over and over. Then, something changed. I came home from work, and the hallway light was on. Again. But this time, there was something new. Written on the mirror, in the fog of the bathroom, were the words, "Stop closing the door." I hadn't taken a shower that morning. The mirror shouldn't have fogged up. My stomach dropped, and I backed out of the room like it might lunge at me. I slept in my car that night. This morning, when I went back inside, the house was calm. Quiet. Too quiet. But on the kitchen table, where I always leave my keys, sat a small object. A child's tooth. Still red at the root. I didn't call the police. I should have. I know that. But what would I have said? Hi, yes, someone might be living in my walls and left a baby tooth on my table. Oh, and they write messages in fog and hum lullabies through the vents. I'm sure they would have rushed right over. So instead, I threw the tooth in the trash, grabbed the flashlight I kept in the junk drawer, and went down into the basement. The air down there is always colder than it should be. Not crisp like a refrigerator, no. It's a damp cold. Like something breathing just behind the cinder block walls. The kind of cold that sticks to your bones and makes your joints ache. The crawl space is at the far end of the basement, behind the old oil tank. A low rectangle in the wall, just about 2 feet high. It used to be covered with plywood, nailed in haphazardly, but that morning, it was open. Or rather peeled back. I stared at the black rectangle like it might blink. My flashlight shook in my hand. Then I got on my stomach, and I went in. The dirt floor was damp, and the smell hit me immediately, decay, and something else. Something sweet and rotten. Like a candy apple left too long in the sun. I crawled forward, light dancing off the exposed beams and cobwebs. There were scratch marks in the dirt. Fingernails, I think. A trail of them, leading deeper. That's when I saw the bed. Just a pile of old blankets tucked under the foundation, but it had shape. Order. Someone had made it. Next to it, a small tin box with children's toys inside. Broken plastic animals. Crayons worn to stubs. And off tucked in the corner was a mirror. Small and oval, the kind that belongs on a vanity. The glass was fogged. I wiped it and nearly shat myself. There was a face behind me. Pale, small, childlike but wrong. The proportions weren't right. The eyes were too big, too glossy, and too still. The mouth was open, but no breath came out. I turned. My flashlight flickered. Nothing. Just dirt. I crawled backward fast enough to scrape my elbows raw. I slammed the plywood back over the entrance, nailed it shut with shaking hands, and haven't gone down since. But now I hear them every night. 2 sets of footsteps. 1 light. 1 heavy. And sometimes when I lie very still, pretending to sleep, one hear breathing under the floorboards, right beneath my bed. And the worst part? Last night, I found another message on the bathroom mirror. Are you my new sister? I don't sleep anymore. I try, I really do. But the breathing is louder now. Closer. It's no longer under the floorboards, it's in the walls. Sometimes I hear it crawl past my headboard, and the drywall gives a soft crack as something shifts inside. Last night, the hallway light turned on by itself. Then off. Then on again. Click. 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 Like it was deciding. I finally called someone. Not the cops. I know, I should have, but I didn't. I found a guy online. His name was Darren, and he said he specializes in hard-to-explain problems. I didn't care how insane that sounded. I just needed someone else, anyone, to be inside this house with me. Darren showed up this morning with a suitcase full of gear and a face that looked like it had seen too much already. I get a lot of these, he said, stepping through the threshold. But yours feels bad. I agreed and began explaining what was happening: the door, the crawl space, the tooth, all of it. But he didn't respond much, just nodded and started scanning the place, room by room. EMF meter in hand. A little recorder clipped to his jacket. I followed him, too afraid to be alone in any room, even my own. After 2 hours of nothing, Darren paused outside the basement door. He looked at it and then at me. You said the face was down there. I nodded nervously, and he opened the door. The smell hit us like a wall. Damp. Sweet. Foul. Something's dead down there, he muttered. I wanted to run, but he flicked on his shoulder lamp and descended. I stood at the top of the stairs, cold sweat running down my back. A minute passed. Then another. I called out, Darren. No answer. Just a sound. It wasn't Darren, and it wasn't footsteps. It was dragging. Like something was being pulled slowly across the dirt floor. I backed away, not realizing I was holding the doorknob so tight my knuckles went white. I called for Darren to come back in one last hopeful attempt, and a voice floated up from the dark. But it wasn't Darren's. It was weak and quiet, like a child's voice. We are not finished playing. Then the basement light flickered, and I heard giggling as something ran off, out of view. I slammed the door shut, and I haven't opened it since. That was 3 days ago. The door to the basement is nailed shut now. I hear scratching from the other side sometimes. And sometimes, I hear Darren's voice whispering through the vent, telling me to let him out. But it's not him. I know that. It can't be. Yesterday, I went to leave to just walk away from this whole cursed house, but the front door wouldn't open. Every window shows something different when I look out. Sometimes it's night when it's supposed to be day. Sometimes it's not even my yard. Last night I woke up and someone had tucked me in, folded the blanket, turned off the lamp, left a note on the pillow in a child's handwriting. Play with us. And this morning I could hear them again. The footsteps, walking in sync with me just behind the walls. 1 light, 1 heavy, and a third pair that sounded like boots. And now, I can hear breathing behind my mirrors. I work night shift as a security guard at a small private school. It's old. Been around since the 60s, the kind of building with creaky floors, long hallways, and lights that flicker for no reason. People always said it was haunted. Typical rumors. A student who died on campus, a nun who hung herself in the chapel, a headless janitor. You know, the usual. I never believed any of that crap. Until last week. That night was like any other. 10:30 p.m. Rainy. Whole campus was dead silent except for the buzzing of old fluorescent lights. My job was to check the classrooms one by one. Make sure no windows were left open. No lights on. Simple routine. I started on the first floor and made my way up. Everything felt normal, until I hit the 3rd floor. That's when I noticed it. Room 6. The door was slightly open. Now, that room's always locked. It's an unused classroom. Been empty for years. I've never seen anyone go in or out. I pushed the door open slowly. The lights were off, but the air felt weird. Heavy, like the kind of pressure you feel before a storm. And sitting at one of the desks, in the back there was a child. Just sitting there. Small frame. Pale skin. Short hair. Back turned to me. At first I thought maybe it was a squatter's kid who got in. I stepped in slowly. "Hey. What are you doing here?" No response. I took one more step and the kid turned around. The face was blank. No expression. Eyes wide open, but completely black. Like two holes. And then it smiled. I backed out of the room immediately. Heart pounding. Hand shaking. The hallway was empty, but I could still feel something. Behind me. I turned the corner fast only to see the same child standing at the end of the hallway. Not moving. Just watching. I started walking faster. Tried not to look. Tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was a prank. Then I heard it. Small bare feet slapping against the tiles behind me. I turned again. The hallway was empty. But the sound didn't stop. This time it's faster and closer. I ran. Took the nearest stairwell, not caring where I ended up. I looked down the steps and there it was. The child. Standing halfway down the stairs. Head tilted. Arms hanging loosely. Then it twitched, like a broken puppet, and charged up the stairs toward me. I don't remember how I got out. I just remember screaming. Running. Almost falling down the steps. Next thing I knew, I was outside the gate, knees scraped, chest heaving, and then everything went black. I collapsed. The next morning, they found me on the ground. The admin reviewed the CCTV to figure out what happened. But here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. I never exited the building. According to the footage, I walked up to the 3rd floor at 10:47 p.m. Then I stood at the top of the stairwell. And I didn't move. Not for minutes. Not for hours. Just standing there. Frozen. Until 3:17 a.m. when I suddenly collapsed, mid-step, like someone pulled the plug. But the worst part. Right before I fell, the camera caught something else. A small shape, slowly crawling up the stairs behind me. The child. Except its body was distorted. Too thin. Limbs too long. Crawling on all fours. And right before the footage glitches, it smiles at the camera. They've let me take time off since then. But I keep seeing that kid. In reflections. In dreams. Last night I heard bare feet on my hallway floor at 3 a.m. And when I checked my phone camera this morning, the last photo was a screenshot of the CCTV feed. Except, I'm smiling in it. And I swear I don't remember smiling at all. This was my first year playing basketball, and I seemed to get hurt nearly every game. First game, I twisted my ankle. Second game, I jammed my finger. Third game, I fell and nearly broke my nose. All I was looking for was an extra pair of socks. I had run through all of my own socks, and my dad and I had relatively the same size shoes, so I went into his closet to grab an extra pair of socks before my basketball game. I went rummaging through his built-in drawers in his closet and finally pulled the bottom drawer out to see all of his socks balled up and set perfectly in 3 rows. I grabbed a pair from the back, and as I was closing the drawer, an object dislocated from the drawer above and fell onto the socks. It was a doll. It was a voodoo doll of me. It had one tuft of my hair pinned to the top of the head and 2 tiny buttons for eyes. It was wearing a little version of my high school basketball jersey with my number sewn onto the back of it. This was completely out of character for my dad. He was a smart, church-going man that believed treating everyone with dignity and empathy is the best way to live. He would never touch a Ouija board, let alone a voodoo doll. He didn't even watch movies that contain supernatural beings, he claims. We have no idea if demons are real, and I don't want to even think about ghosts. I didn't want to think about it. I had a game in 30 minutes. I planned on asking Dad about it after the game. I grabbed the little doll and put it under my pillow while I went to finish getting ready. We lost. I had the worst migraine I've ever had in my entire life and could barely run across the court without nearly passing out. The coach pulled me out of the game and my migraine moved to the left side of my face while I watched my teammates continually lose the ball to the other team. By the end of the third period, I could barely see, and I spent the rest of the game on the bench. On the ride home, Dad tried to comfort me. "It's okay, bud. We've all had these kinds of days. You did nothing wrong. Let's get you home and take some pain medication and sleep it off." I could barely say anything and just laid in the backseat with my arms covering my eyes. Each time we passed by a lamppost, it felt like a knife stabbing me in the eye. When we finally made it home, I had completely forgotten about the doll. I got ready for bed and took enough painkillers to knock a horse out. When I laid down, I felt the bump from the doll on my pillow. I pulled it out and nearly blacked out again. It had a needle sticking straight into the left side of the doll's head. I pulled it out and the tension began to subside, very slowly, but I could almost feel the needle being pulled out as I removed it. I needed to see if this was real, so I grabbed a thumbtack from the corner of my James Harden poster and stabbed it in the doll's shoulder. It wasn't immediate, but I felt the sharp prick near my collarbone, and as soon as I pulled it out, the pain settled. I pulled the collar of my shirt down and was not bleeding. There wasn't even a mark on me. There was no possible way for my dad to have been in my room after I had taken the doll. I was changing in there the entire time, and we left right after I put my shoes on and jumped in the car. It was only the two of us. No one else lived with us. My mom died about 7 years ago and I was their only child. My dad hasn't dated anyone since and I barely have friends that come over to the house. There was no way anyone could have known where this was, let alone where I put it after I found it. I decided to move it again and see if something else would happen. I searched my whole room for the best spot to hide it and decided on putting it in my vent in the ceiling. I grabbed my pocket knife from my nightstand, stood up on the top of my bed, unscrewed one side of the vent and shoved the doll in. My headache was finally getting to where I could see again, and I turned my lights off before getting in bed. The vent was right above my bed and the low reflection from the light of the hallway shone dully on two button eyes looking at me through the slits of the vent. The next morning, I woke up early to head to basketball practice, only to be yelled at from our coach from losing to the worst team in our division. My headache came right back as soon as I left the house again, this time right at the top of my skull. It wasn't nearly as bad as yesterday, but still impeded on my focus. I finished practice near dinner time and Dad came to pick me up. He usually took me out to dinner on Saturdays, so we headed to the local Mexican restaurant. I was starving but had a hard time deciding on what to eat. Nothing sounded good. My dad picked the same thing as he always gets, and I decided on just basic cheese quesadillas. Practice go any better today, bud? I shook my head. No, I got another headache. I don't know what's wrong with me. This barely ever happens. He seemed genuinely surprised. That's not good. Your mom had headaches a lot when we moved here. They seemed to come out of nowhere and would last for days. Hopefully yours won't develop into those. We can go see a doctor if you want, just to make sure nothing's wrong. No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm just stressed. Hopefully it will go away soon. When we got home, I immediately ran to my room and went to unscrew the vent. One of the screws was missing, so I undid the other side of the vent and grabbed the doll. I found the second screw stabbed in the top of the doll's head.